PR Connections Radio presents.
Welcome to Vegas Hockey Hub here on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rachiele. And on this edition of Vegas Hockey Hub, we're going to be doing something a bit different here on this show, as it is a Good Friday here. And we are going to be kind of looking into the future. You know, it's a while away, but we want to talk about this here on Vegas Hockey Hub. And we want to talk about what team would you like to see your Vegas Golden Knights take on in the first round of the 2024 Stanley Cup Playoffs. Now, there is still some time away, obviously, so a lot of things can go up and go down. But we're looking at the standings, and we're seeing what's going on with your Vegas Golden Knights. And because we are at a point now where we can kind of sit here and knock a few teams out, there's some teams that have already been eliminated, essentially. I mean, mathematically, they're still in it, but they'd have to have a huge shot of going all the way. But when it comes to your Vegas Golden Knights at this moment in time, it depends on seeding, of course. But your Vegas Golden Knights, they should be a playoff contender. They should be a team that's going to go there and be a playoff team in 2024. So to do this video correct and to really do this fairly, I have three options, three scenarios for you that will come to your Vegas Golden Knights. And on this episode of Vegas Hockey Hub on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media, we are going to be discussing, more importantly, who those three teams are and what are the three options for your Vegas Golden Knights in terms of the first round in Vegas. Now, the first option that you have, okay, the first option for your Vegas Golden Knights to face someone in the first round of the 2024 Stanley Cup Playoffs is the Edmonton Oilers. So at this moment in time, if you look at the Pacific Division, Vancouver, they are the leader right now. They are the number one team in the Pacific Division. They have about a 5-point gap from second place in the Pacific Division. Now, obviously, stuff are going to change. There's a chance that, Vancouver could fall off the face of the earth and they could lose that number one seed. But at this moment in time, the Vancouver Canucks, they have a 5-point gap between first place and second place. But what we also have to talk about is the Edmonton Oilers. Because right now, the Edmonton Oilers, there is a bit of a gap there. There is a situation where the Edmonton Oilers, they have a chance of being a number two, number three in the Pacific Division. And what I find really interesting about the Edmonton Oilers is depending on what goes on with Vegas, LA, Edmonton, depending on what goes on with Vancouver, there's so many different options and so many different outlooks when it comes to your Vegas Golden Knights. So let's just set it up right here. Let's say that the Vegas Golden Knights end up being that 2 versus 3 in the Pacific Division. Let's just point out and say that the Edmonton Oilers, they stay where they are in the Pacific Division, and the Vegas Golden Knights stay where they are right now, and they are the 2 versus 3 matchup. Well, what would you expect from a Edmonton versus Vegas situation? What would you be able to see when it comes to a Oilers versus Golden Knights matchup? Well, not only do we have historical data and historical context to use, after all, the Vegas Golden Knights and Edmonton Oilers faced off in the second round of the Stanley Cup Playoffs in 2023. It was a great rivalry. It was a good series back and forth. There was a lot of physicality. There was some goal scoring. The defense was doing pretty solid. And more importantly, we can kind of sit here and really look at what the Edmonton Oilers have done correctly versus what the Vegas Golden Knights did correctly. So when it came to Edmonton, you have Connor McDavid. You have the best hockey player in the world right now. And the Edmonton Oilers have really been counting on him to be the best hockey player in the world. And when Connor McDavid has the puck on his stick, he is one of the most deadly hockey players in the NHL. He is so skilled. His finish, his finesse, I mean, Connor McDavid has been one of the best players in the world for a long time, and there's a reason for it. But then when you really study the Edmonton Oilers and you really actually look at what they have to offer when it comes to a matchup and a playoff side of it, well, how about we just break down what the Edmonton Oilers and Vegas Golden Knights did recently? Because when it came to the recent matchup of what went on with the Vegas Golden Knights and the Edmonton Oilers, that matchup was at T-Mobile Arena, and that was when the Edmonton Oilers and Vegas Golden Knights, they went back and forth, and more importantly, we saw on both ends what the Edmonton Oilers could do. Stuart Skinner was in net for the Edmonton Oilers. And no disrespect to Stuart Skinner, but when it came to him, is he an elite goaltender? Is he a top 5 goalie in the NHL? No, he's not. But is he reliable? Yes. Can Stuart Skinner get you into a playoff spot in Edmonton? I would safely say yes, he will get you there. I mean, on the defensive side, what about when it comes to the Edmonton Oilers? Well, what do you see them on the defensive side? Because defensively, when you break down the Edmonton Oilers and you see the defensive pairing at this present moment, as we are talking about what team Vegas could face and who you would like to see them face in the first round, I mean, defensively, just checking the box score with the Edmonton Oilers, of course you have Evan Bouchard, who has been a bright spot on the Edmonton Oilers defense. I mean, Evan Bouchard, ever since he joined the Edmonton Oilers organization, he's a young guy, solid. Yes, there is some inconsistencies there, and there's some things we can work on, but Evan Bouchard overall has been a very solid guy. He does block a lot of shots as well. Him and Cody Ceci are two of the best shot blockers in the Edmonton Oilers organization. And speaking of Cody Ceci, Cody Ceci, I know there's some memes about him. I know there's some people in Pittsburgh, some people in Toronto. There's been people who he has been with that kind of make fun of Cody Ceci. But at this point in his career, I mean, Cody Ceci is a veteran that you can have in your starting lineup. I mean, at this point in time, Cody Ceci, he has been in the NHL for almost 12 seasons ever since getting drafted all those years ago in the first round. So he is a reliable veteran that you can trust on the defensive side with the Edmonton Oilers. Speaking of valuable defensemen who are on the older side, you have Brett Kulak, you have Matthias Ekholm. So like the Edmonton Oilers are kind of doubling down on the veteran, stable defense when it comes to Edmonton. So that's what their one positive is going to try to be, is the fact that you have some defensemen who are older, who are veterans, who are going to try to kind of stay in front of the puck with Stuart Skinner right behind them. Obviously, I have not mentioned who most people mention first when it comes to defense with the Edmonton Oilers, and that's Darnell Nurse. I mean, Darnell Nurse is one of the highest paid defensemen in the NHL, and he has been a solid contributor to Edmonton since they drafted him in the first round all those years ago. And he doesn't pop on the stat sheet, but when you look at the analytics, that's when it matters. Like the analytics for the Edmonton Oilers is a huge reason why Darnell Nurse is one of the most recognized guys when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights, Edmonton Oilers, and that situation there. On the forward side, we talked about Connor McDavid. We've already talked about him. You have Leon Draisaitl, who when it comes to a Robin, to a Batman, he is one of the best Robins, one of the best number twos in all of hockey. I mean, Leon Draisaitl is a top 10 player in himself, and he's a number 2 in Edmonton. They also have some guys who can be trusted at times. You have Zach Hyman, the guy who came over from the Toronto Maple Leafs. He was a very good free agent move by Edmonton a few years ago. You have some gritty, defensive-minded guys in Corey Perry and Evander Kane on this team on the forward side. And then they have some veterans on the bottom six, Connor Brown, Derek Ryan, and you have Ryan Nugent-Hopkins as well, kind of fill out the middle six with the forwards in Edmonton. So overall, the Edmonton Oilers do have a chance And I would say that this matchup is what I would prefer. So your host, Ian Rachiele, I actually would want to keep it this way. Like, if it was possible to find a way for Vegas to kind of keep the matchup here, find a way to be a 2-3 Vegas versus Edmonton, your host, Ian Rachiele, I would enjoy this matchup because of what we saw last year, because we saw the Alex Pietrangelo incident, because we had the physicality, we've had the scrums in the past with Edmonton and Vegas. You have a guy like Evander Kane who can get under anybody's skin. You add Corey Perry to that list, someone who is a aggressor, someone who plays the game in a very physical style. He could probably get under Vegas's nose as well. So overall, the Edmonton Oilers would be a good decision there. And honestly, if that was the first option and that's a team that the Vegas Golden Knights have to face in the first round, I am not against it. And I actually think that would be a solid move for your Vegas Golden Knights. So as we're talking about what team would you like Vegas to face in the first round, here on Vegas Hockey Hub on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media, that was option A. All right. Option A is for the Edmonton Oilers to have just what it is, 2-3, Vegas versus Edmonton, Edmonton versus Vegas. That's going to be the reality there. But I want to bring this one up because some people do not want to mention this team because people don't want to talk about the possibility of them losing the number 1 seed. So option number 2 and option B is the Vancouver Canucks. Now stay with me. This is going to be very impactful. The Vancouver Canucks have a 5-point gap between the first seed in the Pacific and the second seed in the Pacific. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that Vancouver will slide. I'm not going to come on here and explain to you that the Vancouver Canucks are going to have such a downfall that they're going to fall out of the number 1 seed. But what your host, Ian Rachiele, will tell you is that it's possible. And since it is possible, we are going to talk about it here on the show. Since it is a possibility that the Vancouver Canucks could slide out of that responsibility, the fact that they could drop thanks to a 5-point separation and seeing what the matchups look like to kind of end the year, we are going to bring this up. And we're also going to use historical data as well, because some people forget that the last matchup Vancouver had against Vegas, that was actually at T-Mobile Arena. And with the T-Mobile Arena, the Vancouver Canucks took on the Vegas Golden Knights at T-Mobile Arena. That was a victory for your Vegas Golden Knights. That was a very solid win for Vegas. I mean, they outshot Vancouver. They almost doubled the amount of shots that Vancouver had on that night. And more importantly, Vegas actually went down to Vancouver, if I remember, a while back, and they beat Vancouver at the Rogers Arena. So overall, for the Vegas Golden Knights, what can you expect from a team like the Vancouver Canucks? Well, understand who the Vancouver Canucks are, because this is a Vancouver Canucks team who over time has become a lethal weapon. This is a Vancouver Canucks team that, we could talk about Thatcher Demko. We could talk about the goaltending. I know they have Casey DeSmith now. I understand that's a thing. But when it comes to the Vancouver Canucks, this is an organization that when you really stop and analyze this team, it's more than just the goaltending. It's more than just the defense stepping up and being a catalyst as to why the Vancouver Canucks are having one of the best seasons that we are seeing over the last couple of months. I mean, the first couple of months of this season, make no mistake about it, your Vegas Golden Knights have been, kind of around par to the Vancouver Canucks, but the Vancouver Canucks have been better overall. That's the reason why at this moment in time of this recording, they have the number 1 seed. They are the number 1 option for the for the Pacific Division. But let's just talk away from Thatcher Demko and actually get towards the defense. So on defense, you have some veterans, 2 solid veterans in Ian Cole and Tyler Myers. Myers and Cole have been doing this for a long time. Cole is a former Stanley Cup champion. I mean, if you have to have a Stanley Cup champion on your defensive pairing, he is one of the best that you could possibly have with the Vegas Golden Knights. I mean, this guy, 35 years old, if you want someone to go up against the Vegas Golden Knights on defense, he is arguably one of the best you can have. Just remember what Ian Cole has done. This is a guy who won 2 cups with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Is also the same guy who has been a part of some really established playoff teams in the past. He was there when Colorado was starting to become good around the late teens. There's also the same Ian Cole that when the Minnesota Wild was trying to get into the playoffs around that bubble time, he was on that organization. When the Carolina Hurricanes were making that run and trying to get into the Stanley Cup Finals a couple of years back, he was on that organization. And his most recent stop before the Vancouver Canucks was to the Tampa Bay Lightning, who had just came off back-to-back Stanley Cup final appearances. So Ian Cole is a solid veteran that you can have on defense. And then Taylor Myers, not just his size, because he is one of the tallest defensemen in the NHL, but when it comes to Myers, this is someone who he has learned a lot in his time in Vancouver. I mean, a lot of people forget that when it came to Myers, he is someone who started out with the Buffalo Sabres. You know, he was a former first-round pick in Buffalo. Then he moved over. He played for the Jets for a little bit during the Dustin Byfuglien era when they had all those guys. But then you ended up going to Vancouver. And considering how good Quinn Hughes and some of those young defensemen have turned out, I have no doubt in my mind that Myers is a veteran presence who they value in the locker room. So when it comes to the Vancouver Canucks, this is a guy who they can trust. But we also have to be transparent. He is not the best defenseman or the most impactful defenseman Vancouver has, does he? No. The most impactful defenseman is a guy who's going to be in the Norris conversation once again. This is their face of the defense. This is someone that when he steps on the ice, everyone takes notice, and that is Quinn Hughes. Obviously comes from the Hughes family. We know about Jack Hughes. We know about Luke Hughes, and we know about Quinn Hughes. Now, he is out there in Vancouver doing what he has done ever since they drafted him in 2018, and that is just being a dominant defenseman. I mean, right now, he either leads in assists or he is like second in assists when it comes to defensemen at this point. I mean, Quinn Hughes is just being incredible at this moment in time. His statistics are outstanding for the Vancouver Canucks. So if you're Vancouver, you have 2 solid defensive pairings on your line. Your forward depth, it's a bit concerning, but overall, if you have Brock Besser, you have Connor Garland, all right, you really look out there and you have some good guys. They went out, we know about what happened last month when they got Elias Lindholm from the Calgary Flames to bring him over. You have JT Miller, and then you have Elias Pettersson. This is a very interesting situation with the Vancouver Canucks where you have a top 9 that you could really contribute and have some solid leeway. So the reason why Vancouver is number 1 in the Pacific is because of their top 9, their defense. They have 2 solid defensive pairings, and then their goaltending has stepped up this season compared to what they've done in the past. So that's option B for your Vegas Golden Knights. Remember, option A is the Edmonton Oilers, okay? The option A is a stay at the 2 versus 3, and it's Edmonton versus Vegas. Option B is the Vancouver Canucks. They fall into that 2 versus 3 side, and your Vegas Golden Knights take on the Vancouver Canucks. Because once again, a 5-point gap might seem big, but then when you consider the amount of time left, and you also consider how red hot the Edmonton Oilers have been. I mean, just remember when they had that 16-game winning streak, which got snapped by Vegas, by the way. But remember when they've had that streak. Remember when the Edmonton Oilers over the past month and a half, have just been winning and winning and winning. The coaching change was a big reason for that, but the Edmonton Oilers have been red hot, so this is a possibility too. Now, the third and final option. This is doomsday. This is the worst case scenario for your Vegas Golden Knights, okay? Now, I am not going to sit here and say that I want it. You are not going to sit here and say you want it. But we have to address it. We have to talk about it because it is a possibility. All right? Option C is that your Vegas Golden Knights, they don't do what they need to do. All right? They do not stay as a 2 seed. They do not stay as a 3 seed. They don't stay where they need to be. And when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights, you're no longer in that 2 versus 3 matchup against Vancouver and or Edmonton. So the Vegas Golden Knights end up being a wild card. They end up getting surpassed by whoever the heck surpasses them. For some reason, people say it's going to be this team here. No disrespect to them, but they are so shaky and so inconsistent. I think the only way they surpass Vegas is if they have about 25 overtime losses. I know I'm exaggerating that part, but seriously. Like, the LA Kings have been so inconsistent this year. You know, they have their hot streaks and their cold streaks. And they just keep battling in between those. It's just been ridiculous. But let's just say, for argument's sake, that, you know, Vancouver and Edmonton, all right, fine. And then for somehow Vegas loses that 2 versus 3 battle. And ends up being that team right there, which to me would be a huge shocker. You know, if you tell me by the end of the year that the LA Kings will be better than Vegas, I will be shocked as your host. But option C, the winner of the Central Division, who will be a number 7 or number 8, okay? Whoever the first wild card team is going to be will probably take on the winner of the Central. And because you're taking on the winner of the Central, that means that you are going to be going up against one of these 3 teams right here. Okay? Let's just take this into effect. Right now, the Dallas Stars, the Colorado Avalanche, and the Winnipeg Jets have been the most dominant teams in the Central right now. All right, Minnesota, St. Louis, Arizona. I don't even remember who the rest of the teams are in the Central. But, you know, there's been some teams who might make a little bit of noise. But overall, the 3 dominant teams in the Central at this point in time have been Colorado and Dallas, who are kind of around the same points right now. And then you have the Winnipeg Jets, which do need to get some work done to kind of stay in the level of Colorado and maybe Dallas. Now, let's break this down one by one, okay? Let's say that somehow the Winnipeg Jets find a way to do it. Okay, so you have a rematch of the first round last year, except it would be reversed. Last year, you had the number 1 seed, Vegas, taking on the wild card Winnipeg Jets. Now, it would be a top seed Winnipeg versus the wild card Vegas Golden Knights. And you know what? Hand-to-hand, battle versus battle, when you take away Connor Hellebuck from the Winnipeg Jets, I really don't see how your Vegas Golden Knights would lose a series against Winnipeg. I just really do not comprehend how it could be done on that end. So if it ends up being this way and it's just a reverse of what was last year, because last year the first round was a wild card Jets versus a top seed Vegas, so it would be a top seed Winnipeg versus wild card Vegas. I don't see it happening, and even if it did happen, your Vegas Golden Knights should come out on top and beat them in the first round. Now, if it ends up being this team right here, we may have some problems. Jake Ottinger is a top 2 goalie. He is a Vezina finalist. He has just been absolutely incredible this season. I mean, their defense has been outstanding. And when you consider the last matchup the Vegas Golden Knights had, it wasn't easy. It was brutal. It was absolutely bare bone, down to the wire kind of situation. But your Vegas Golden Knights, it was really interesting to see how they did against Jake Ottinger, because considering who they have on defense, you do have Miro Heiskanen, who has been their face of the defense ever since they drafted him. They do have that veteran in Ryan Suter, who is a good third defensive pairing at this point. But it's the forwards that worry me. It is Roberson, it's Tyler Seguin, Joe Pavelski. You also have Matt Duchene, who they brought over. You have Evgeny Dadonov, Jamie Benn. I mean, this depth that Dallas has could be scary for Vegas. So if it ends up being them by the end of the year, if doomsday scenario happens and you have to go up against a top seed, one of the best teams in the Western Conference, this would be a tough battle for Vegas. The only way I could see Vegas winning is, since the Vegas Golden Knights, and since they've already done it this season, we can talk about it, they have swept the Dallas Stars. They started out with a 6-1 win. Then they had a 2-1 win in overtime. Then they won here at T-Mobile Arena, a 3-2 shootout win. And that was really it with the Dallas Stars. So overall, the Vegas Golden Knights swept them in the series here in the regular season. But anyone who knows hockey knows that a regular season sweep does not guarantee a 7-game first-round series. So I would be very scared of the Dallas Stars, but I'm not as scared as this team here. Oh my goodness, if this ends up being the first-round matchup, I'm not going to throw in the white towel, okay? I'm not going to say that we're giving up, but how brutal it would be for your Vegas Golden Knights, okay? This would be absolutely a terrible matchup for the Vegas Golden Knights. Just remember what happened recently. Just remember that the Vegas Golden Knights went to the Pepsi Center, went to Denver, and got shut out 3-0. Okay, just remember that. Just remember that the Vegas Golden Knights, they took on this team, and they got embarrassed on TNT. I was at Red Rock Casino watching this game. I was at the bowling alley, hanging out, eating food, doing some bowling. They got shut out on national television by this team. I mean, their depth is incredible. It's the reason why they won a Stanley Cup a few years back. And the goaltending has gotten better. Alexander Georgiev, he is an all-star this year. On defense, Cale Makar is just one of the leaders on that team. And then your top line is arguably the best or second best in the NHL. So if I had it my way, I would prefer them, okay? I would prefer this team here, okay? I would prefer having Winnipeg, and then second case scenario would be them, and then the worst case scenario would be them. I do not want to face Colorado until at least the Western Conference Finals, because the Colorado Avalanche are scary. Okay, this team is remarkable. So let's go over the options one more time. So option A is that you stay at the 2 versus 3, and the Edmonton Oilers become that seed. You take on the Edmonton Oilers in the first round in the Pacific Division, and despite how red hot they have been in the past and how good they've done as of late, the Vegas Golden Knights, they take on Edmonton, you take on McDavid, you take on Draisaitl in the first round. Option B, the Vancouver Canucks. Somehow, the Vancouver Canucks squander a 5-point lead in the division. They lose those 5 points in the Pacific. They fall down to 2 versus 3 that we've talked about, and your Vegas Golden Knights lose. They lose and they get the Vancouver Canucks as option B. So you have Edmonton as option A, and option B, the Vancouver Canucks, but you stay as a 2 versus 3. And then option C is that the Golden Knights fall to a wild card team somehow, and you face the winner of the Central, Colorado, Dallas, Winnipeg, whoever it is. They are the winner of the Central, and they take on Vegas in the first round. Now, I want to know from all of you, who do you want Vegas to face in the first round? What team would you prefer your Golden Knights to face off against here in the first round when it does happen down the line? So until then, this is Vegas Hockey Hub. I'm your host, Ian Rachiele. And until next time, continue watching hockey, go support junior hockey, and go Knights, go.
PR Connections Radio thanks you for watching this podcast. Check out more episodes of this show and our others at prconnectionsradio.com.